After 20 years of building together through dust, deadlines, and damn good ideas, Pace and Adam invite you to join them for honest conversations about the home building world. Welcome to Build Connected, where experience meets insight, powered by Diamond Home Restoration.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Build Connected. I am Pace.
And I'm Adam.
Thanks for joining us on episode 57, Adam. How was your weekend?
Hey, that's how old you are? Aren't you 57?
Not yet, almost.
Oh boy.
Almost. Man, the numbers are getting big.
Yeah.
They're not triple digits, but they're getting up there.
Holy mackerel.
Holy mackerel.
I had a pretty low key weekend, as the kids like to say, low key. But
Low key. Low
I
key
mean,
chill?
yeah, well, like that was low key cool. They use it like that, but I'm using it in the normal way that the normal people would say low key.
The
It
way
was
that
it was
two old guys like us would use
Well,
it.
one old guy and one, younger guy. It was a low key weekend, it was chill, long weekend, Memorial Day weekend, didn't go away, stayed
Lots of
home,
vibes, good vibes.
pretty good vibes, did ended with a barbecue thing. Oh man. Okay. Well,
Yeah,
you? Good weekend?
sure. No
Uh,
vibes. It
no
was a
vibes.
vibeless weekend. All
Okay.
right, what are we talking about today?
Let's talk about foundations, footings, I guess.
Yeah.
Footings, right? Are, the typical footing detail that we are all familiar with, and I'm sure everyone out there that's listening is probably familiar with the old concrete footing used to carry a load when we build houses or decks. But I want to talk about something that's been around for a while and we don't see them enough. And I think that it is a great product, and that is helical piers. Helical piers. So, if you've never heard of a helical pier, envision a giant screw that's the size of you, right? And these helical piers that are these giant screws are used to carry a heavy load. And so these can be used in place of a concrete footing. And the way there's a couple ways that these can get installed. If you're doing a big project and maybe you're doing a home addition, you would use these helical piers and drive them into the ground using a heavy piece of machinery, maybe a mini excavator, and you would attach a bit to that mini excavator, and you would drive that giant screw or helical pier into the ground. For smaller jobs, perhaps you're building a deck and you want to use a helical pier, you can get a pretty simple hand tool. I guess it's what, like a giant angle drill, you would call it. And you can drill them into the ground with one person. So they're really a great alternative to concrete. For lots of reasons, right? Probably a low carbon footprint, with using a helical pier. And if you ever do demo, they're easy to remove. I think the way these things work, Pace, and tell me if I'm wrong, I think they calculate the torque, the amount of torque that it takes to drive these things into the ground. And as that torque increases and it gets harder to drive them in, that kind of indicates the amount of load that those helical piers can carry. Right. So you're kind of measuring as you're driving these in. And if you're in soft soil, these are highly recommended. If you're not getting a high calculation on that torque, you just drive them down deeper until you do. And you just keep attaching another steel rod on top continuously until you get that depth that you want. So yeah, kind of a very cool product. They've been around for a while. We don't use them, but we should, huh?
Well, we've used them, the big boys, at one time in particular, years and years ago, in an underpinning situation. And it is definitely a specialty tool sort of scenario. But I mean, there's all flavors. There's the big boys, which are rated for more your additions on a house or even a house, down to smaller pins, right, which are very appropriate for decks or, um, in my case, I didn't end up using them at my camp, but I had planned to use them for a staircase leading to a dock. So it was going down a steep embankment. There were tons of challenges with concrete, especially being so close to the water, that these pins were a great solution. And so the idea was, every 5 feet, I was going to drive a pin down into the soil, and that would support like a steel stair structure. In the end, we didn't actually put the dock in that location, so we had a much easier solution. But I mean, they're very versatile, and aside from the tool cost to install them, you mentioned the sort of right angle drill. Like if you're doing the big boys, you're using like an excavator with an attachment. But with the smaller pins, you can even use like a pipe setup, and you can manually wind them down into the ground. Um, I think they are very uncommon in our region. I know nationally there are places that use them a lot. And I think it's just a great versatile solution that, if one of our goals is to cut down on concrete, this achieves that.
Yeah, I mean, not only for new work, right, but these are great for doing foundation repairs, right? Maybe instead of an underpinning detail, you drive these giant screws right next to your foundation, and there's special hardware that you can use to attach to the existing foundation. So lots of good ways to utilize these.
Yeah. I love these things, and I hope in the future we use them more. Today I'm going to talk about something. I'm going to kind of classify this as noise, not audible noise, but noise in the sense of distraction. Recently I was going through plans for an old job that we had completed. And along with the plan set, I found the original plans to the house. And I don't know the exact year that those plans were generated. I would guess in the 70s or the 80s. What was striking about them, so they were hand drafted blueprints, is how efficient, clear, and concise they were. This is a pretty significant house. I want to say the plan set was 6 pages, and it was just so concise on what needed to be constructed. I compared that to the plan set, which was generated in the past 10 years with all the California regulation. And my goodness, there was so much noise, so many regulation, right? On every single page. Just, it was so easy to get lost, right? To look at the plan set and just the page was completely filled with just verbiage. And it was so much more difficult to cut through that noise and get to the heart of the design. And I just think we have gone the wrong way. And you know, this ties in with the regulation, right? I'm not saying that we shouldn't be building higher performance homes, because 100% we should. And I think that just needs to wash over the industry at large, and not be a one-off for every kind of plan set. But I was so amazed by how clear the old plan set was. And when I say old, right, I'm talking 30 to 40 years? Like, is that really old? Just the amount of information and how it translates, how it's been lost. It was striking.
So yeah, let's get back to hand drawing plans, huh? What's next? We're
Nope.
gonna get rid of cell phones? No more cell phones?
Certainly not saying that, but I'm saying that there's a better way to convey information than we are currently doing on the plans that we generate here in California. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, there's a ton of valuable and invaluable information, right, on those plans. And us speaking from experience, how many times do we bid a job and there's a very important detail that should have a cloud around it, but it's when we read plans, and typically an architect or engineer will do like a big cloud around something that requires a change or something. It brings attention to it, but that gets overlooked sometimes because of all the noise that you're talking about that might be around that area. And there's so much of an overabundance of information that I'm not going to say it's all invaluable, but there's some of it that is not needed, and it makes things harder for a contractor to read until you are really in the minutia of that part of the project, right? Like as contractors, it's challenging, right? We get a set of plans to bid a project, and you're trying to go through everything in your mind and everything on the plans before that project starts. But once you actually start that project, you don't really get into the weeds until you're on a very specific portion of that project and you're on that specific page and you're diving in deep, and you can, not only visualize it on site, but you're seeing it on the paper. And then sometimes you catch something and it's in really small writing, and you say to yourself, holy shit, I missed that, when we first looked at these plans. And it's easy to do that.
Yeah, I'm going to say what I said differently. This is separate than the building code, right? This is just a general a plan set for a project versus like the general building code. On its own, I want the building code to be completely revamped nationally. I want it to be tougher, right? But I want it to go from 10,000 pages to start half of that, right? That should be the first step. Ultimately, I think that, the language in the building code could be reduced by 80%, right? But it will be tougher building code for higher performance homes. I think that that is so easy to do. I think if you get the right professionals together, I think that is easy to overcome, and we will build better homes, right? There will be um, higher performance and they will last longer. And that's a great goal, and it'll make life easier for every professional involved. On the other hand, the plans that you generate per project, right, do not need to include the building code, right? They should be plan specific for building that structure. I think that's what I'm saying.
Governor Pace Blair coming at you is going to make some of these changes in the future. I
I
like
would
it.
be assassinated on day one.
Ooh, okay. All right. Well, on that note, on that positive note, let's move on to something interesting on a project. I think, over the years, you and I have done more and more home inspections for potential buyers of real estate, and even for people selling their real estate, right? And so this topic is really about homeowners, whether you're purchasing or selling, and some of the things that we encounter and the things that need to be thought through a little bit, because it's interesting. And I think you and I almost on a weekly basis, we're looking at new properties for people. It's a service that we provide, and it's also fun to see some of the houses out there. I get enjoyment out of it. But in any case,
Good and
we
bad.
good and bad, yeah, for sure. In any case, we were looking at a house that is for sale and it's under contract, and the potential buyer is doing their due diligence on this particular house, and there are some cracks in the foundation and a couple of other things going on. I won't get too much into the weeds in it, but it's really about people that are, maybe you're buying a house, but you don't have the expertise to really identify the problems and what it's going to cost. And, as a buyer, you want to be able to identify those and negotiate the price so that it will help pay for that. I mean, that's it in a nutshell, right? So what do you do? Um, and on this particular one, I think it was a good decision that, you're spending a lot of money on a home. The potential buyer brought in a structural engineer to take a look at some of the issues that are happening. And, then that engineer puts together, just a 3-page write up about what they recommend. And so, we would typically get a call to come out and try and observe what the engineer looked at. And, everybody wants a price, right? And I think that if you're a home buyer looking for a price based on a 3-page write up or whatever it might be, you should never expect a good contractor to provide you exact pricing on anything like that, right? I mean, as contractors, all of our pricing and estimates are built off of plans and details. So it's about bringing somebody in that you trust, that you can have kind of an open discussion with and utilize their expertise and their experiences, and try to get a gist of maybe some ranges of pricing that can help you decide if it's an endeavor you want to jump into, you know?
Yeah. I think, in relation to the pricing that you mentioned, I think that one reason that's so dangerous is, whether it's an engineer or an architect, oftentimes they'll throw a price at, let's say you're hanging a TV, right? You can look at that project of hanging a TV and you could say, okay, well, I'm gonna go buy that TV rack and I'm gonna kind of mark it on the wall where I want it. I'm gonna level up. I'm gonna put some screws in. I'm gonna hang that TV. I'll be in and out 2 hours, right? A non-professional, like a non-builder, will look at it that way. But you and I will look at that. Depending on the house we're in, we might be spending a half a day like doing floor protection to move just through the house to that point, right? Are we moving something off the wall that needs to be patched and painted, right? We get that thing on the wall. That's the easiest part of the project, but all those associated things you're going to do, like maybe you've got to end up painting the room over, right? And then you've got to back out. You've got to kind of clean your way out of the house. So that thing that somebody who doesn't do it every day thinks is 2 hours, it might be in fact a day. It might be 2 days, right? And I'm exaggerating here to make a point. Like we're not charging people 2 days to hang a TV, but it's about the associated costs that go with a solution.
Yeah, I think that lines up directly with, what we're talking about in the sense of this exact project that we looked at, right? Like there in that engineering report, the engineer, gives his 2 cents on what's going on, but the engineer also provided what he thinks is kind of a rough number for the items. But after looking at some of these numbers, I think that that engineer was thorough in his thinking on the actual specific work for that part of the job, but he wasn't thinking about the shoring that's involved, relocating, say a furnace and a water heater to make space for the work that needs to happen, the site protection that you're talking about, right? So, that's why it's important to not only have the engineer come in, but to, bring a professional contractor to add some more information to that,
Yeah, I mean, these associated and dependent costs, they add up, like on any project, right? Like cleaning, moving material, it takes time. You and I, get paid for our time. That's what we're doing. That's what our career is, right? We don't work for free, right? And we don't want clients that want us to work for free.
Yeah, well, speaking of working for free, my wife wants me to finish my daughter's closet shelving. So, I mean,
You
does that
got
count
work
as
to
working
do.
for free?
That
Huh?
that is definitely working for free.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
I want to, could you please record to me when you say you would like your wife to pay you to finish up that project? Especially when you show her all your markup. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Glad to have you here. Episode 57. We'll see you next week. On Pace.
And I'm Heinz Ketchup.
That's not who you are.
Oh, 57. I love ketchup. It made me think of Heinz Ketchup. I'm Adam.
See ya.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Build Connected. For more stories, insights, and ideas, visit diamondhomerestoration.com or find us on Instagram and LinkedIn. We'll be back next week. We hope you will too.